So, uh, first of all, thank you for inviting me for this table to all the organization of TestingUy. And thank you, Michael, for being here. And everyone here. So, thank you, everyone. Okay, we will be talking about testing in software development companies. Okay, we will follow the pretty same schedule the other panel followed. So, let me introduce everyone. First of all, we have Andrés Aguiar, Director of Product Development of Infragistics. I don't know if you want to say something about what you're doing right now.
Hi. So, yeah, basically I manage the Uruguayan office for Infragistics. We are like 45 people here. I also run the software development teams in the rest of the offices, which are in the US and Bulgaria. And we basically do product development. So we create products for different things that I'm not going to explain now. But that's basically what I do.
Then we have Gastón Milano, the CTO of Genexus, the big Uruguayan company. So, if you want to say something about what you do right now.
I'm CTO of Genexus, as you said. Genexus is a Uruguayan company with branches in Brazil, Mexico, USA, and Japan, which is our main market today. And well, our mission here in the software industry is try to simplify the software development. And in order to do that, we are doing model-driven development to do that. Okay, but we have several challenges in terms of testing internally that we are going to talk about.
Okay, and then we have Gastón Cruz, Business Intelligence Manager of Arcano Software.
Hi, good afternoon. As Leo said, my name is Gastón Cruz. I work for Arcano Software. Arcano is a software company from Uruguay, headquarters here in Montevideo, and a branch office in Chile. We are 80 consultants right now, and we are Microsoft Gold certified partners. We almost do all kind of software development using Microsoft technologies. Focus in Azure, focus in Power BI, focus in Xamarin, and we have a mix of different development projects, fixed budget, that's hard, and agile methodologies and time materials. Okay.
Okay, so I am Leonel Moore. Sorry, I didn't present myself. I am the CEO of 1950 Labs, and I am a big supporter of this conference. I am following it with Uruguay IT, the biggest network of IT software professionals in Uruguay since the beginning, and I am very proud to be here. So, Michael.
What was your name again?
Leonel Moore.
Leonel.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you want to introduce what we will be talking about in this panel? What do you think about software testing in software development companies, and what will be the difference with the other thematic? You can use this one.
Okay. Which 19? Oh, it's let me turn it. Oh, there we go. Somebody turned it off. Wasn't me. Yeah, it's testing. Well, again, testing within a software development company is a context. Another context in which testing happens. In many ways, of course, that means that the overarching mission is not different. We're experimenting with and exploring a product to learn about it, to help people evaluate it. one one thing I could say, I suppose, is that it's odd for me to think about a software development process that doesn't have testing woven all the way through it. So I'm curious to hear what you might think might be different about your context, and maybe we can talk about those things and respond to them.
Okay.
So, and I worked like all my professional career in products instead of services projects. And in products, what you have is that you know that you are going to live without product for a long time, right? And you need to do the right thing, because if not, you are going to pay for it later, right? So all the investments you do in approaching testing in a good way usually pay off, and there's a strong benefit to do it, to invest well in that area and try to do the things the best way you can. Also, in the way we do software development and product development in the last years had changed a lot, based basically in the way we can ship software. It's totally different to test a product that you ship once a year than testing a product you can ship once every 2 weeks or several times a day. Okay? And the different ways you need to approach the problem are quite challenging, and is that it's not enough to say you can do manual testing or automation. There are companies that just don't test much. They automate, they ship to production to a small subset of customers or users, and then find things in production because they cannot replicate a production environment in any other way than in production. Okay? So all of the things are like change a lot the way you need to think about testing, and I think the role of testing in those companies, there needs to be a mindset of, okay, understanding, knowing that we need to ship every 2 weeks, what we can do, what is the best use of our time in these 2 weeks, okay? Where are the areas where we need to take risks, where we cannot, what are the approaches we need to have. Maybe we need to test some things manually because we don't have time to automate, that's fine. Maybe we can automate other parts, maybe we can pick which parts of the product we are going to work on based on the risk that those changes might imply in our code. So we prioritize development based with a testing mindset. Okay, so we cannot test these things. We don't have time, don't touch them. So all of those things are very important, and I think it's the challenge for testing in these companies is trying to help the organization and the teams to answer those problems. What is the best way we have to in a smart way, apply the time we have for testing in the most efficient way.
Well, I completely agree. I mean, I think that now the product-based development and deployment is shifting, as Andrés said, to a service-oriented. So I think that at this time, every company, well, I was working 20 years in a product company that is creating just only one product that is called ShenXus. But now we are facing the challenge that we are moving to a service-oriented world where, I don't know, a long time ago we released a version of ShenXus each year, okay? Actually, now we can say that we are naming a version each year. But at the end of the day, every day we are releasing a new version on 3 different channels, okay? A canary, a stable, the trunk, and so every day more than 300 people are downloading our product or is consuming our service. I don't know what to say today, if we are creating a service of ShenXus or we are creating a product. So we are now we have this challenge, and with the next wave, we are seeing that everybody is adding to these services artificial intelligence. So now we have more challenges in terms of products to create testing and to know in each branch what is the key performance indicator for this branch in order to say to our customers that the level of quality, I don't know how to say that, if it's quality or not. But what is the what can they can expect on each services that we are releasing every day? Actually, we are running, for example, more than 1.5 million tests every day, but checks every day. And yeah. But I was studying. No, but yes, but we don't know if the quality, even the checks pass very well, or the verification was okay, if the quality is good. Because of that, we need people working on usability testing or other quality of the software. I don't know. It was.
Okay, so Gastón, and what do you think about that in your company, which is very different from the others? The others are developing products, and they have budget, very specific budget, maybe for a testing part. But Arcano Software, as far as I know, develops software for other companies. So, what will be the difference?
Okay, we've been involved in software as a service for 10 years now. So we have different curves of testing QA teams in different kind of projects. First of all, we had our own QA team a few years ago. But one thing regarding engagement with our own QA team is to get a real revenue for that kind of team. You have to think about how you can improve internally your QA team, how you can engage with this thing, how you can increase the competencies of these kind of teams. And right now, for example, we are engaged. We have several engagement with different kind of third-party companies doing QA, and this is a best part of doing cost benefit in several ways, because right now we are been developing software for many clients doing different kind of things, and we have third-party companies to have the quality assurance of these kind of projects. So, in my point of view, what is the main thinking that we have, and what is the best approach for new technologies, is that kind of thinking that we are thinking in QA teams for different kind of projects, not just fixed budget, agile methodologies, also for different technologies like intelligence, artificial intelligence, cognitive services, how you can test bots, different kind of bots. For me, Power BI, how you can test a solution in Power BI if you did ETLs, SQL Server, tuning, and then a dashboard for a business management. So I want to ask Michael how you handle this in software companies right now. How is the best approach to see the future in QA teams?
Very clear question.
Okay. Well, some of this goes back to my earlier answer, which is that any time that we're engaged in a process of asking questions about a product, modeling it, learning about it, we're engaged in a testing activity. That goes on all the time. And what we're doing in the testing field right now, I hope, is we're getting over this long head cold, where our noses and our breathing got all messed up by this idea that that all there was to testing was sitting in front of a product and operating it. Nothing could be further from the truth. Right? That is a kind of testing. we're also maybe getting over this long head cold that you can only test the product if you have the working product in front of you. That's not true either. You can test an idea. You can test a diagram, a flowchart, a description. You can test what somebody says at a meeting by that questioning process. One of the things that I hope we're getting rid of is this idea that there's a testing phase. You know that, you remember that from product development, you remember that. Right? There's we got a project, it's a 10-month project, and so we're going to develop for the first 8.5 months, and then for the final 6 weeks, we're going to test. Well, that's, first of all, that's a pretty stupid idea, because it's like saying, well, we're driving from here to somewhere 5 miles or 5 hours away. Let's drive for 4 hours and 10 minutes, and then for the last 50 minutes, we'll look out the window. Dividing a trip in your car into a driving phase and then a looking out the window phase. But we've known all the way along that programmers test as they build. Programmers test as they write something. Now, they don't necessarily do exhaustive testing, and they tend to be focused on things that programmers are interested in. Like, does this set of inputs fed into this function that I just wrote produce this set of outputs? But that kind of testing is going on all the way along. What we're rediscovering now, and I'm absolutely certain that we're rediscovering it, is the way that they used to build software in the 1950s and 60s, which is that everybody on the team took on a testing role at some point in their own process of whatever they were contributing to the product. That everybody, just as programmers pair now, right? When programmers are pairing, they're engaged in a very fast set of loops of writing code and testing it, Now, they might not be doing usability testing on it in that moment, but they're absolutely testing it. The vision of testing that we're trying to spread around is it's exactly that idea, that testing can happen as soon as you've got something that can be tested. As soon as somebody has produced something, from an idea to a line of code, to a new function, to a unit, to a few chunks of integrated units, to this build, we can test it. And that should be absolutely part of our entire process. When I was in commercial software development, building a product, we did have a period at the end of the project where we focused very heavily on saying, all right, now, is there anything else that we haven't checked? All the way along, developers would send us these emails, which said, I've just put a new build in latest. Everybody start using it. That was going on all the time, back in the early 1990s. There's no reason why that ever should have stopped, or why it was ever done any different way. People don't build anything without trying to get some observation of it, trying to get some experience of it. There's no other business where we put all this off until the end. So if we're in a phase now where we're releasing every 2 weeks, that's okay. We are testing as we build, and maybe at the very end of that process, we do some sanity checks to see if there's anything obvious that we've missed. But the kind of testing that is what I think of as testing can happen with anything all the way along, and we shouldn't be waiting to do it.
Okay, and speaking about that time, 1980s, what it was automatic testing? What it was automatic testing in 1980s?
There was no automated testing in the 1990s, and there is no automated testing today. There is no automated, everybody say it with me now, there is no automated testing. Testing cannot be automated.
Sorry, you're correct. Automatic checks.
Automated checking. The developers on our project actually did a fair amount of automated checking. They would not necessarily put it into the build process, but they would have a suite of, for example, our developers at Quarterdeck worked on an expanded memory manager. And they would build a product, and they had a bunch of things that would exercise memory management functions. They would basically call int67 in a whole bunch of interesting different ways. They'd try to allocate memory, release it, store it, and they would build along with their code. They would build suites that would allow them to do automated checks, but that would also allow them to do experimentation. They could sit at the keyboard and interact with the product with a whole bunch of testing tools that allowed them to exercise the product in various different ways. So our whole idea about the way we use tools in testing also got messed up somewhere along the way. Not so much where I was brought up, not in the Silicon Valley-like companies. We had a Silicon Valley company in Los Angeles, right? So we were far away from Silicon Valley, but the attitude was the same. Continuously building, continuously tinkering, not making huge changes. And then, as you say, I think it was Gastón who said this, we call something a new version, but there are new versions being built all the time. Nothing's particularly new there in my experience. And to do it any other way, to me, seems crazy. So I was actually the creator of the first completely automated build at Quarterdeck. That was in 1997. So all these punk kids who come along and say, I built continuous integration or continuous deployment in 2011. Very nice. Good for you. Now, there's enormously more sophisticated stuff being done today, and I think that's wonderful. I think there's some people are doing some very creative stuff in terms of the volume of checking that they're doing. At the same time, I worry about that a little bit, because if you're doing 1.5 million automated checks, how do you understand what the results are? And how do you know that they're all actually checking something? So we were a little bit more skeptical back then, because it was harder to do, and it was harder to determine whether the checks were actually doing the right thing. So here's a little thing you can do. Try this one time. Change the name of the exe file, or maybe of the page if you're doing that sort of thing, or of the ASPX module. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what these kids today are doing. But change the name of the target and see how many tests still pass, right? And see how many of those checks are actually not revealing what you think they're going to reveal. It's always worthwhile to test your testing, as it were, test your checking.
So somebody else want to add anything?
Just to comment the 1.5 million testing checks. Now the difference is basically we are creating a model-driven tool. So we are creating basically, I don't know if you listen about intentional software like Charles Simonshi. Okay, the number of basically the complexity of the software and the formula of Simonshi said. We have this problem. I mean, we are modeling to the abstract level, and we are creating a generator, using generative programming for generating different targets. So any aspect that we add to the testing, for example, we have a generator for different DBMS, okay? And for example, we have 4,000 tests for each DBMS. So when we introduce a new instance of the DBMS, like SAP HANA-DB right now, that is happening, that we increase in 4,000 our automatic checking. Because of that, this is that we have a lot of aspects to test, and we have a lot of instances for each variable. So that's because we have several checking millions of checks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that sort of stuff can be really, really cool as long as you're paying attention to what the checks are actually revealing, and as long as you're being skeptical that they're not. Here's what a machine will never do. A machine will never say, "Oh, that's interesting," or a machine will never say, "Is there something else I should be doing?" Right? A machine will never say, "Well, technically that result was right, but geez, it took a long time," unless you've programmed it to do that. So I think the application of those kinds of tools are very useful, really wonderful. We can put so much more stuff through the system than we used to be able to do. Let's think critically about it as we're doing it, and that will supercharge our testing. Let's not think of it as machinery doing the testing. Let's think of it as machinery helping us to do the testing. Yeah.
One question regarding that, because I was thinking about a project that I am involved right now, is chatbots. So how you deal with chatbots when you have to test or check a chatbot, because you have so many ways that you can handle a conversation with the bot, with another bot, and you don't want to create another bot to chat with the other bot. No? Or yes, perhaps.
Invisible interfaces at all, chatbot, but invisible interfaces like voice.
Well, I mean, once we've recognized that machines don't do the testing, that humans do the evaluation part of it, sometimes we say that a machine evaluates the outcome, but that's not strictly speaking, it's not evaluation exactly, not to me, because we have to ask this question: are we happy with it? Are we good with it? Is it going to fit the social purpose? In the last few years, James and I have become fascinated with the work of a guy named Harry Collins. Harry Collins is a sociologist of science, and one of the things that he's interested in is expertise. One of his earliest books, 1992, I think, is called Artificial Experts. He's been looking at the artificial intelligence community for a long, long time, watching that stuff go by. He's working on another book on AI. But he did a wonderful thing in 2013. He wrote an abstract for the Eurostar testing conference where he said that computers and their software are actually two things. They are bits of machinery, like clockwork. And so they have gears and cogs, and we must check them to make sure that the cogs fit together and that the wheels spin nicely and everything's okay. But he says they're also, all the software they're producing fulfills a social purpose. We're trying to get something done for people. People are trying to make stuff for other people. Now, it's interesting, the idea of a chatbot talking with another chatbot, right? What's going to happen there? And do we care? I mean, if the chatbots are happy, they'll just keep going back and forth. But will humans be happy with that chatbot? Harry says that requires a complex set of social judgments to decide, is this, for example, chatbot, enough like a human being that it will satisfy us? And if it's not like a human being, that might be okay. Will we be able to repair the difference between what the chatbot does and what the human would do in the same moment? Like, for example, if you swear at the chatbot, does it call its manager and say, yo, I got a really tough customer on the phone, and is there a manager in place that's alerted quickly enough to respond to that problem? Well, if that's the case, then it might not matter so much that the chatbot doesn't behave exactly the way that the human will, but will we be able to tolerate it? Machinery can't make that evaluation. We need humans to make those kinds of evaluations, and that's where skill testers, as people who are concerned with social issues and not just technical ones, that's where machinery can help us a lot with the checking part. but we still need humans to evaluate the outcomes of the checks and to look for problems in the checks and look for problems in the product that the checks don't cover.
Okay, so and in your opinion, Michael, how much automatic checks are okay if you are developing a product?
Well, how many bites are okay when you're having a meal? Right? I mean, I don't think that's a question that's more about a how many. I don't think that's a how many question. I think that's a how good question. Do the checks do the work we want them to do? That's a question about desire. It appears to me, well, clearly some, maybe, maybe a lot, but I don't think I can answer that question outside of a particular context in a helpful way. Use tools when they help. I guess another way of putting it is, how many hammers do we need to build a house? Well, if it's one of those houses, you know, those little models, those bird houses that you get where you just sort of fit them together and glue them, you don't need any hammers at all. If you're talking about a house that's being built with steel girder construction, and then there's snap-on walls, maybe you don't need any hammers. Let's choose tools for what they do for us, and not say that there's a correct number or a correct tool for any given task. Let's make choices about that sort of stuff.
Okay, and that choice should be made by the testers or the manager?
I think everybody in the project has a role to play in that decision-making process, because it starts with the question, what do we want to know about the product that we might not know otherwise? So what risks exist that we want to shine light on? Okay, so one of the things that we get asked a lot is, should testers be programmers too, so they can write automated checks, program checks? And my answer to that is, I stole from James Bach, which is, well, if you're a tester and you don't know how to program, you have two choices. You can learn to program, or you can learn to be charming. Because there are programmers around where you work, probably lots of them, and if you need programming done, one of the ways you can do it is you can say to a programmer, could I get your help on this? Because it's going to help us understand what's going on with this product, and that's part of my job, which is, as a tester, helping you, dear programmer, to look good. Right? So I can help you look good, but I might not be able to do it as well as I could without some help from you. So be charming.
What do you think about that? How do you handle automatic checks on your project?
So, and I think depends a lot on the product. There are products where it has a lot of work in the UI, which is difficult to test for whatever reason. And in those, we just have like I will, every time I say test, you can replace it with check, please.
Automatic test? No.
It might be good to,
I need to use both.
test too.
Yeah, yes.
So, but if we're clear on that helps.
That's fine. And I'll try to stick to the check work whenever it applies. And then, so now you made me lose my track. So I was saying.
It depends.
No, I'm kidding. So, and for other products that are easy to automate, that is like where most of the return of investment you can get there is automating, and we do that a lot. So we have both things, and there are products where we have a lot of automation in most of the products. In some products, there are areas we cannot automate, and we decide to not to do it because of the cost or the cost of maintenance, or because it's not worth doing, or whatever. Right? So, yeah. So there's, again, depends. And if it was my choice, I would automate everything that makes sense, that adds value, that being smart. So I think you should write as the least amount of automated tests that you can, because that's code you need to maintain. So if you can avoid writing it, that's great. And that implies being smart about doing that and then doing the right time and checking the right things. So.
Anybody want to add anything?
Let me just say one thing. There are some things that are hard to check, but easy to test. There's some things that are easy to check, but because there's such a volume of things, they're sort of hard to test in that sense. It's hard to get really good coverage of that thing without using tools. Then there's some things that are hard to test or to check, right? And there are various reasons for that. One of the reasons might be that the tester is not sufficiently skilled. So let's try to fix that. Another reason might be that there is uncertainty about what problem the product is trying to solve. Well, that's interesting because that makes it hard to test in one sense, but it makes it easy to test in another. In fact, that's a test result right there. If we're uncertain about what problem the product is trying to solve, that's an important test result. No check required, right? But I think it sort of check test. But there are things that are hard to test, and there are things that we can change about the tester or about the project or about the product that might make it easier to test or to check, and that's always worth considering too. So I'm glad you triggered that idea.
Okay, let's change the topic for a moment, and let's talk about outsourcing testing services. Michael, what do you think about outsourcing that kind of services, and when it will be good and when it will be a bad idea doing that?
Outsourcing makes me nervous. There are a couple of reasons why it might be a good idea. One is when the outsourcing lab has equipment or platforms or instruments that you don't have in-house and that would be very useful to the testing effort. When you want to know something that you can't discover in-house with the hardware, with the machinery that you've got, and somebody else offers that service, then that could be very useful. A second instance in which it might be a good idea to outsource testing is when you are aware that there are certain skills that you don't have in-house that would be hard to develop or expensive to develop in the amount of time or budget that you've got. Two things that spring immediately to mind: security and performance, but then almost immediately accessibility comes to mind as well. Not that many organizations are up to speed on deep accessibility testing for people who have physical or even or perceptual or problems of one kind or another that don't fit in with what we would sort of callously regard as normal people, where people have exceptional problems that need to be dealt with. Of course, when I talk about, as soon as I talk about that, I start thinking about the idea that these people are exceptional is actually kind of ridiculous. It's people who are absolutely normal who are the exceptional ones, right? People who have no disabilities whatsoever, and they're a precisely average height and a precisely average size. Come to think of it, if they're precisely average, they would have to be half man and half woman. So nobody is normal in that sense. You can't make things out. Anyway, accessibility testing for people who have various kinds of compromised abilities and things. Expertise that you don't have is a second powerful motivation for outsourcing. A third possibility is the idea that, I guess it's kind of tied to the second one, that you're in something that's so crucial that you need an outside evaluator to have a completely different perspective from the people who are inside. And in fact, that's how the notion of independent testing started back in 1957 on the Mercury project, when Thomas Watson went to Jerry Weinberg, 24 years old at the time, and said, we've got a project that's so crucial, we can't trust the people who are building it to be perfect. Now, of course, it's never true, but not being perfect would be okay most of the time. But in this case, our software is going to be on worldwide television, or at least the project is going to be on worldwide television. It was the first space program. And they said it's so important for this to be right that we're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to get an outside test team to look at this. Even considering all the testing that's being done internally in the project, we're going to have somebody from completely outside look at it and try to find problems in it to make sure that it's being looked at from a very different perspective, and that's the goal of it. That actually led to a lot of problems later on when it got to the point where, oh no, we shouldn't have testers on the development team. that message got distorted like a broken telephone thing. It's a crazy idea not to have testers in the development team, it seems to me, or at least have a testing mindset. So that might be a third case in which the project is so overwhelmingly important that you need another set of perspectives on it.
Okay. Anybody want to add anything about that, and how do you handle that in your companies? Or?
I mean, we believe that there's very good thing to outsource in some cases, as Michael said. In our company, basically, the only thing that we are not going to outsource is the testing management. We believe that the testing management should be in our company, but and there's a lot of things that we in some cases, like the security, we have several companies that we have some partnership with them that they help us to create tooling around our needs, okay, securing things like security, penetration testing, etc., and in some cases usability testing, that because they are in the field. So in these cases are for us, we don't have the internal skills, but obviously in our testing management is increasing their skills each year, okay, and they know more, and in some cases developers became tester, and I don't know if it's a tester or a developer, because it's and we are creating tools. So basically we outsource in general the skill that we are missing in a particular moment in the story of our company.
In our case, we don't do that. We usually try to develop skills in-house, and assuming that we'll need those a lot, and we have like a long time to return that investment, because we build products, so we keep using those skills that those guys learn. Okay? So that's the approach you usually take. It might make sense at a certain moment to do something different. We haven't found the opportunity to do something different yet.
Okay, in Arcano we have different kind of quality assurance teams. We engage with some partnerships with companies in testing, but what we fit good for us is to have an engagement where the QA people came to our company and work all together in the same team. Because it's not just the skills, security, expertise. It's just to be there with the whole team and to try to think like a whole team working together as one company. Not, okay, you are from 950 Labs and I am from Arcano, and that man is from Abstracta, or that man works remotely to QA. It's not just to be there and be part of the team. That's a cool thing about outsourcing that we did in the past. We came along with this idea, and works good for us to be there all together, working together in the same team.
Yeah, I really like that idea. And if you're running an outsourced test lab, as I imagine many people here might be, the close contact with the client, whether you are actually physically in the room or not, I agree, absolutely. It should feel like you're all part of that team there. That's a wonderful point.
Sorry. Okay, let's talk again. Let's go to HR. How do you evaluate, or how we should start to evaluate testers when looking for candidates, Michael?
When you're looking for candidates, one of the things that I would look for right away is the capacity of the person to come at a piece of software from two angles at the same time. It's very tricky. One is to look at the technical skills of the tester. Those are important. But the principal thing that a tester has to bring to the table, I believe, is a capacity to see things differently from the way that the people are building it. And that often means, interestingly, that you don't need to have any particularly strong technical skills. Because those can be learned by being immersed in a group that has people who have that technical expertise. To start with, at least, it seems to me that a tester doesn't need to have any skills in the domain that they're being brought into. What they do need is a capacity to learn quickly, to think critically, to think systematically, to think scientifically, to be able to analyze a system, whether that system is a software or a development team, right? To be able to analyze that, to be able to develop what Harry Collins calls interactional expertise. That is the ability to talk with people who are in a form of life, developers and builders and managers and so on, without necessarily being able to contribute to, let's say, for example, the writing of the code. Testers shouldn't need to be able to write code in the testing role, right? Because of the charming business, right, from before. But a tester should be able to develop the capacity to talk with all the people who are involved with that stuff and to be able to learn about it and apply what they've learned to the process of finding problems in the product. That's the special focus that testers bring. And to think about how might we think differently about this product, how might we come at it from a different angle. Those analytical skills and those critical thinking skills are the things that I would look for in a tester or a candidate.
Okay.
How do you handle that in your companies?
I'm not a recruiter of tester, but anyway, basically the same thing. We always try to analyze. Actually, we are hiring a tester, but I'm not a recruiter. But by the way, in terms, I'm not in charge of the testing management. But we are waiting for persons that can the capacity or the skill to learn. It is think in different ways. We are not expecting only young people. Okay, we really evaluate the sense of humor of the persons, and many things that are not very technical things. So basically, we are trying to see if they have some kind of capacity of skill to have a good administration, capacity to be integrated with other persons, capacity to be creative in many aspects, and have the skill to produce different things. That is a high-level way. Obviously, depend on the context that we are hiring is the other technical skill that we are seeing in the person.
That's a difficult question. We haven't been hiring testers a lot. What I will say is that I will try to hire someone like Claudia. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's like for me the most important thing that I would look for a tester is her ability to actually help us find the right strategy for testing a product. Okay, I think like everyone can do in the team. We can help everyone in the team to automate or to do. I did say automate, so I didn't say automate testing or checking. That was on purpose.
Everybody can check, but not everybody can be a tester.
Yeah, and I think the most critical, the thing I see lacking more in the teams we have is this thing. Okay, what really does make sense to do with the time we have for testing? Okay, ask this question, answer it in the right way. All right. So, and that of course implies usually quite senior testers because that comes with time. Okay, trying to see the problem from that point of view and trying to understand where to invest the time. Right, so.
Okay, thank you. We have a few minutes now for open question. If someone would like to ask a question for the panelists or Michael about this topic or give a feedback about it.
Hi, I'm Oscar. My question is for Michael. I want to understand why not automated tests.
Let's take another question. We could ask the other guys, why not automate the test? What's the password? Oh, that's right. It's open. Okay. So you guys answer real quick, and then I'll give you my answer. Okay.
So
I will try. No, basically, it's just what we talk when we talk about tester. I think that here in this community or in many communities are talking about different things. We are talking about a checker versus a tester. There's a good article from Michael that can explain the difference between be a checker and a tester. So in this kind of article, they explain exactly what's the difference. A tester needs to do creative things that can be automated. Okay, they need to have different point of view, as Andrés said, of how to test how to test the product. In some cases, are human activities, but in some cases not. Some particular things can be checked, as the tester said. So I don't know exactly, but it's not it's being a tester. Okay, it's being have capacity to learn, having ideas, different point of view of how to test, creating test cases in order to have the best way to test your product. But it doesn't mean that this needs to be automated. When you start to say, okay, I will automate this, okay, you are automating checking, validations, things like it's just a change of name. Okay, we need to start talking about more how to check in automatic way instead of how to test in automatic way, because for testing we need people like Claudia.
Now, I wonder if the question you intended to make was why we can automate testing, which is what I think Gastón answered, or if you were making a point of why we should or not do automated checks. Okay, so I don't know what was the question you wanted to make. When is the right moment to actually do automated checks and to write those things? Or
no, it's because I don't understand. Maybe because I'm trying to translate the meaning to Spanish, but I really don't understand the difference.
Well, first response is don't worry, because English-speaking people have this problem too. I declared in 2009, and then James Bach and I wrote a blog post to clear it up because there was still some confusion about it. A check for us, the rest of the world doesn't adopt this distinction. They don't have to. But we found it very helpful to distinguish between a test and a check. A test is an instance of testing, right? It's one test is something you do. It's a performance that you do by performing an experiment, exploration of the product, which includes studying it, modeling it, questioning it, a whole bunch of other stuff. A check is the part of testing that you can do, a part of testing that you can do that can be done completely algorithmically. Can be done by a program. So that includes operating the product, observing it, applying a decision rule that returns a bit, 1, 0, true, false, yes, no, green, red, pass, fail. And then also automatically, algorithmically provides a signal to a human about the status of the checks, whether they appear to pass or fail, whether they are green or red. So a check does that. It returns a bit. A test doesn't return a bit because that's not the only part of it. When a tester says, hey, this when I put these outputs in, I didn't get this, or when I put these inputs in, I didn't expect this output. I didn't get this output that I said should happen. Are we okay with that? Well, the whole idea of putting those inputs in, and the whole idea of performing that activity, and the whole idea of making that observation and saying, you know, this isn't what we thought we were going to get. What do we think? That's the testing part. And the exact parallel exists in programming. There is a part of programming that can be done entirely by algorithms. We call it compiling. Right? But nobody calls compiling automated programming. They call it compiling. So what we do is we call that checking. So in order to answer this, a little while ago, I was going to do an evening at a Dutch testers meetup. I wanted to look at all the different things that testing involves that are not the checking part. Okay? So it goes like this. I need people to do that. Yeah. Ready? Here we go. Experimentation, learning, freestyle exploration, studying and modeling, conjecture, observation, test code development, task prioritization, checking out competitors, preparing simulations, reconciling your testing with required regulations, gathering, assessing, and applying information, deliberation, judgment, designing visualizations, setting up the lab to try complex configurations, working out the problems in a puzzling situation, finding ambiguity in a product specification, trying to look beyond the predicted expectation. That's because testing's all about investigation, questioning and learning playful product interaction, trying to keep your focus while you're managing distraction, sense-making, myth-breaking, decision-making, no faking, stressing out the product to discover where it's breaking, refining test approaches through deliberate practice. How could hackers hack this? Don't give them access. Wrestling with problems in the setup of environments, interviewing users to discover their requirements, interrupted and disrupted because their product's full of bugs. The fellows who developed it must have been on drugs. Talking with the managers to learn what they require. testing for charisma. That's what customers desire. So I socialize to promote collaboration. Other folks can help me with my testing preparation, working with the marketers to show the app's power, point to all the features, try to finish in an hour, selecting, configuring, and then applying tools, applying critical thinking. Confirmation is for fools, refactoring at every step, keeping things maintainable. Let's get over overtime and make the pace sustainable. Building coverage models, analyzing risk, eliminating waste, trying to keep the pace brisk. Pattern recognition, distributed cognition, helping shy colleagues get over inhibition. I want to say this while I'm in a rap rhythm. A check's a part of testing encoded in algorithm. Testing much more than automated checks and test cases. Human variation puts the product through its paces. Use the tools powerfully. That's what I'm suggesting. But don't try to tell me you can automate the testing.
Thank you very much.
I hope that answers your question.